All right, we're going to go back to Israel now for a brief moment. Updates from the ground. Hamas deputy leader Saleh al-Arouri was killed in an attack in Beirut. Now, this is Lebanon. Israel has been striking Lebanon, but southern Lebanese positions, and never directly a place like Beirut until now.
Breaking news coming out of Lebanon, where an Israeli drone has assassinated Saleh al-Arouri, a senior official from Hamas. At least 4 people died in the strike.
I think they were desperately looking for a dub. That's my immediate reaction. My immediate reaction is they were desperately looking for anything that they could consider a dub. So they were like, who's a target? Like, who's a high-profile person that we can hit? And the fact that they did that in Beirut is kind of crazy. They attack another country land. I mean, they've done it a lot. They've attacked Lebanon quite a bit. They've just never attacked Beirut. Beirut would be considered definitely a major escalation. It's basically seen as like a given that southern Lebanon and northern Israel are taking pot shots at one another without it being considered a red line by either party, I guess, because nobody wants a two-front war. Well, I mean, certainly not Israel. Israel, on the other hand, obviously, historically has been very aggressive towards Lebanon, at least in recent years, has not escalated this much.
Till the moment, we don't have any confirmation whether this was a drone attack, whether this was an explosion, a bomb planted in the office, or a warplane. Till the moment, there is no clear picture on how this was conducted, though there are many that are saying it's likely a drone attack. And if it's a drone attack, then this is the first time since 2006 in Beirut. The other thing is that Saleh al-Arouri's significance within Hamas. He's the liaison between the military wing and the political bureau. He is the man who's known to be one of the founders of the military wing of al-Qassam brigades. He was in Israeli prisons for 15 years, since the 90s until 2010. The significance of this assassination is that it stresses the fact that this whole war that started on the 7th of October 2023 is a multi-layered war, a war that's already being raged on Gaza, people being killed in Gaza. At the same time, it's a security war and multiple fronts.
So now Israel's attacking other countries. Israel hasn't stopped attacking other countries. Israel has not stopped attacking Lebanon. There's a difference between southern Lebanon and Beirut, however. It's like a difference between active border conflict happening somewhere. Like, I want to give an American example, but there's no way to give an American example in this circumstance. But like, if America and Mexico were like fighting, I guess, and they were fighting in the southern border, and then Mexico blew up an apartment complex in New York City. Oh, Ukraine is actually a much better example. Yes, Donbass and Kiev, great example. You're right. Russia and Russian proxies fighting against Ukrainian forces in Donbass was a constant thing. Blowing up positions in Kiev, however, I mean, if we're talking pre-invasion, obviously, if that had happened, if that had occurred, that would be a major escalation and very different.
You know, Hazem, there were rules of engagement that we've been referring to all over the past 3 months. Rules of engagement, whereas Hezbollah's hitting within 3 to 5 kilometers, sometimes 10 kilometers inside the Israeli territories, and Israel hitting also within the Lebanese territories towards the Litani River, which is like in a depth of 15 to 20 kilometers maximum. But today there's something outside the box. There's something outside the whole rules of engagement. And
when they say rules of engagement, there's like rules of engagement that we all know and understand. International criminal misconduct in war or crimes. Then there's rules of engagement that Israel is supposed to have and America is supposed to have that are way above all of those. And then there are major escalations beyond those rules of engagement. And this would be a major escalation beyond even the already lowered, the already opened up rules of engagement. That's the difference here. The expectation from people in Lebanon and the expectation from everyone is that Hezbollah might retaliate. It's the post-2006 rules of engagement agreed to by Israel and Hezbollah. No attacks beyond the borders and attempts to do that will be met in kind by either side. Yeah, this was a red line for Hezbollah. Do you actually believe that? Do you actually believe Hezbollah would do anything? I mean, it's what they've said they would do. That's it. That's all I know. There's nothing I can say here. I do not see the future. I can simply tell you what the priorities are and what the red lines prior were, and that's what I'm telling you. I mean, it could be a trial balloon of sorts to see how far Israel can push their neighbors in the region without them retaliating in kind. It could mean that. That's definitely something that they could be testing out. It could be Benjamin Netanyahu trying to escalate the conflict, maybe trigger a two-front war, draw out Iran, or do something that I consider suicidal of sorts, because he simply wants to stay alive politically. And the longer this goes, the longer he can justify being the leader and not going to prison over corruption charges. It could mean forcing America's hand into joining the conflict in a more active fashion. It's just like there are so many ways. They didn't retaliate when Soleimani was targeted, so they might not. I mean, we'll see. It's just, like I said, the reason why Hezbollah did nothing and did not retaliate at the behest of Gaza, even though they're supposed to be a part of the allegiance of like Iranian proxy forces or Shia proxy forces, was because the state of the Lebanese economy was dire, and that Hezbollah knew that they would not be able to fight against Israel and then have Israel retaliate in kind, and then have Israel apply the Dahiyya doctrine on Lebanese cities, pulling a Gaza in many different cities inside of Lebanon. They simply do not have the economy to be able to withstand that at all. Beyond, I mean, the pot shots that they've been taking, which Hassan Nasrallah said was simply a up to the regional militias there, and not a directive that was coming from the leadership of the Hezbollah or the leadership in Iran at all. As far as like the leadership of Iran or the leadership within the Hezbollah structure goes, they simply said southern Lebanese militias are going to react and retaliate in kind due to the many escalations from Israel and Gaza. Well, beyond that, sit back, look around and find out. We are not afraid of America, that sort of shit. But they didn't really do much. It's interesting to think. I also believe that the United States today or yesterday started pulling out one of their carriers from the region. So the timing on that is interesting as well. And Barak Ravid says, 2 U.S. officials told me that Israel is behind the strike in Beirut, but didn't notify the U.S. in advance of the attack. This has been happening quite a bit. This has happened with not necessarily just Israel, but also with Ukraine. This, to me, I guess it's more of America's influence waning. Because like if Ukraine can get away with that, and Ukraine cannot maintain itself under Russian occupation without American support, without Western support, if you can't get Ukraine to listen to you and regularly move outside of the boundaries that you've established, then of course Israel's going to do that too. A senior Israeli official confirmed Israel didn't give the U.S. a heads up, but it said Israel notified the Biden administration as the operation was happening. There's a statement from Hezbollah that I will be reading to you as well to get their perspective on the matter. We mourn our Arab and Islamic nation. We mourn free Palestine and his great resistance and his proud people, and the Mujahideen everywhere. The great Mujahid leader and deputy head of the political bureau of Hamas, Sheikh Saleh al-Arouri, the criminal enemy, which after 90 days of crime, murder, and destruction, was unable to subjugate Gaza, Khan Yunis, the Jabalia refugee camp, and the rest of the proud cities, camps, and villages. It's resorting to a policy of assassination and physical liquidation of everyone who worked, planned, carried out or supported the heroic Al-Aqsa flood operation and contributed to the defense of the people of Palestine, the oppressed. And today's crime is a continuation of the crime of assassinated leader Saeed Radhi al-Musawi in another field of action and a new front of combat and support fronts. This heinous crime will not increase the resistance of the resistance in Palestine, Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, Iran, and Iraq, except in their belief in their cause and a firm commitment and determination to continue the path of resistance and jihad until victory and liberation. Now, the last paragraph is the most important part. The first paragraph is the classic shit where it's like, where our cause is just, our boys are holy, they're engaging in like a just cause, that kind of stuff. We consider the crime of assassinating Sheikh Saleh al-Arouri and his fellow martyrs in the heart of the southern suburb of Beirut to be a dangerous assault on Lebanon, its people, its security, sovereignty, and its resistance, as well as the highly symbolic and significant political and security message it contains, and a dangerous development in the course of the war between the enemy and the axis of resistance. We in Hezbollah affirm that this crime will never pass without response and punishment, and our resistance in its pledge is steadfast, proud, and faithful to its principles and commitments that it has made to itself. Its hand is on the trigger, and its resistors are in the highest levels of readiness and preparedness. And this is a well-known day that will be followed by many days to follow. So beautiful patience, and God is the one who helps, and victory, God Almighty willing, is very near. Yeah, overall, they're saying they are going to retaliate. Be patient. Okay, so it said nothing. I mean, I don't think that's nothing. We in the Hezbollah affirm that this crime will not ever pass without response and punishment, and our resistance in its pledge is steadfast, proud, and faithful to its principles and commitments that it has made to itself. Its hands on the trigger, and its resistors are in the highest level of readiness and preparedness. Such a great example of how the Israeli government doesn't prioritize the safety of its citizens at all. I agree. It is a dangerous escalation. I wonder what the other regional partners are thinking, because there's Hamas members, especially like high-ranking members within Hamas in every other country. Now, Lebanon is different than Turkey. Lebanon is different than Qatar. Lebanon is different than the U.S. client states. Lebanon itself has Hezbollah in it within its political structure, which is part of the reason why they are not an ally, like a on-paper or off-paper ally to Israel in the same way that Recep Tayyip Erdogan is. Right? Recep Tayyip Erdogan can say whatever he wants about how, Netanyahu, you are Satan Yahoo. Like, he could be like that all day, every day. He could be like, you are the Nazi. But then ultimately, simultaneously, Turkey is responsible for like almost half of the steel going into Israel and almost half of the energy going into Israel by way of Azerbaijan. And they could destroy the Israeli economy in a way that the people of Yemen could ever dream of, if they wanted to, like that, but they never will, because it's all just talking. Erdogan is the big yapper. You guys say Hassan Nasrallah is a yapper, but the real yapper in the situation is Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Yeah, all he needs to do is basically go like this. Just go to the valve and do this. Shut off the gas that goes through pipelines in Turkey to Israel. But he's not going to do that. Like I said, I think one of the interesting parts about this is like, is there a real tactical reason for killing this dude? Only because you can't get to like Yahya Sinwar, which Israel has claimed they have, found his house, or he's in his house. They've have him surrounded for weeks. Every other week, there's a new update from Israel saying like, oh, we got him. We're gonna get him. We're gonna get him any moment now, right? Israel is doing another American playbook thing where they'll just be like, oh, we couldn't get Osama yet. So who do we get? This other guy. We got this other guy instead, and he's the most significant guy. This dude is obviously the deputy chief. He's very high up in the Hamas leadership structure. However, having said that, there are plenty of Hamas leadership that are operating freely in They're operating freely outside of the boundaries of Gaza. The problem is, you only do this, especially when it's a major escalation. You only do this when you're running out of options, because people are looking at what you're doing with all of your military might. And they're looking at how many reservist mouths you need to feed. They're looking at the secondary impact of said reservists coming back home and having to deal with their own businesses. Because like the Israeli military is comprised not of military members, full-time military members, but instead of shopkeepers, accountants, marketing guys, small business owners. All of that is going to have a secondary impact on the Israeli economy. The fact that they're no longer working. DJs, right? Israel's largest economic sector. Like weirdly named pizza shops and DJs, as Felix says. And that's their bread and butter. So when those guys are out fighting in Gaza, killing children, they're not back home doing pizza parties where they're DJing and stimulating the Israeli economy. That puts a timeline on how long you can fight this war, how long you can engage in ethnic cleansing. And yeah, as the world's supply of trans is rapidly diminishing and house music, progressive house music is rapidly diminishing, that puts an endpoint on the amount of time that Israel can actively engage in this conflict, actively engage in ethnic cleansing. And it makes it less popular overall. The prospect of war less popular overall, especially when you have nothing to show for it. Especially when you still have Israeli tanks being blown up, fucking, Roadrunner style, with like some 18-year-old in an Adidas tracksuit, a fake Adidas tracksuit, coming out of a hole and just like putting a bomb, Looney Tunes style fucking bomb, and then running away and then blowing up a fucking tank. When that's happening, you have nothing to show for it. You're having a very hard time like managing the situation and then showing everybody that you're doing a great job. When you have nothing to show for it, you get desperate. What do? First, you go to refugee camps and take every male, every military-aged below or above male, strip them, say they're all fucking Hamas terrorists, and get at gunpoint, force confessions out of them to justify it, and then turn around and go, look at us, we're doing a great job. Except IDF soldiers are still dying. IDF tanks are still blowing up. Missiles are still being fired. Like on New Year's, missiles are still being fired. You've occupied half of Gaza. You're blowing up the other side that you haven't occupied yet, but are like trying to occupy. And they're still fucking lobbing missiles into Israel. At that point, the Israeli citizens recognize, okay, well, where's our safety? Penetrating through that thin veneer of safety that Israel tries to reinforce over and over again is the sole reason as to why Hamas and other militant groups will regularly lob rockets into Israel to say, no, we're still here, bitch. Like, we're still here. You haven't done shit. So, in a way, despite the fact that the losses have been dire, I mean, it's been tremendous in Gaza. As you guys saw, half of Gaza has been reduced to rubble. Tens of thousands of civilians murdered in cold blood. The entirety of civil society in Gaza is wiped out. They're purposely assassinating teachers, professors, researchers. They're going into banks and stealing money and money exchanges. Like, they're bandits. Israel and the Israeli occupying force is operating like fucking bandits. And those are the numbers that we do know. 10,000 children, 30,000 total, or not 30,000, like 20 something. I don't know what the last number is. They're doing all this stuff. They're killing doctors, they're killing journalists, and they have nothing to show for it because turns out Israel is not more safe now. At a certain point, you have to show a prize to say, look, we got this. And because they couldn't get that in Gaza, because they couldn't say, like, look, the number of rocket strikes into Israel is greatly diminished, for example, then they have to take out a high priority target. They have to assassinate a high priority target. That's why they went after this dude. And there's two reasons to do that. One, to show the public in Israel a big dub for you, right? And two, to continue escalating the conflict and the tensions. You do that, you extend the war. And the longer the war goes, the longer Netanyahu can remain in power and not go to prison. On top of that, Israel can test out something very important here. Will the major red line that they've crossed turn into a two-front war? Will Hezbollah fight back? If they don't, then Hezbollah's influence in the region has diminished. Iran's influence in the region has diminished. Iran as a regional power is no longer interested in following through on their promises. So it's a gamble. It's a big gamble. So we'll see how it turns out. Now, while that's happening, ironically enough, there are troop withdrawals happening in Gaza. Israel also, or Netanyahu's administration, has also taken a significant blow in judicial reform by the Supreme Court in Israel. So you have that as well. One of the American carriers in the region has pulled out on top of that, which is why it seems very odd. The timing of this escalation is very odd. I don't know if they have the proper intel or they've made the math calculations that like Hezbollah cannot retaliate. They do not want the smoke, or because they want to very desperately pull back America and justify their existence by, causing retaliation from Hezbollah on like Tel Aviv or some shit, you know what I mean? And then turn around and go, look, Israel is being under attack by all of its regional enemies. And Elint 5 also correctly pointed out that the Houthis have been profoundly popular in the region. So Hezbollah, despite the fact that they have the Lebanese economy to worry about, absolutely sees how popular these actions are the actions the Houthis are taking, or that probably gives them additional reason to potentially attack Israel. Yeah, Elon News says these troop withdrawals are essentially a way of being able to continue the war throughout 2024 at a low intensity by reducing ground operations to a level of counterinsurgency and also help the Israeli economy bounce back. Yeah, they did the ethnic cleansing, and they're going to continue it, and they're going to maintain bombing operations, I suspect, but they do not want troops to keep being put in harm's way, and they also don't have the bandwidth to continue feeding that level of troops. You just don't have it. The ROI is not there. Their troops have also said very unpopular PR. Yeah, that part doesn't matter. Inside of Israel, think about it this way. Everything inside of Israel and the way that it's received, it's topsy-turvy. Things that are profoundly popular in Israel, like gross depictions of genocide and ethnic cleansing, are profoundly unpopular in the Western world. When they see that, they go, what the fuck? That's some Nazi shit. Like, what are you doing? But that level of dehumanization, that level of like reaffirming support for, or that level of like showcasing that you are genuinely engaging in an act of genocide, that plays well amongst the public in Israel. That's what they're expecting. So I don't think that they're pulling out their troops because it's doing bad PR. Israel does not care about the bad PR that it has. Israel only cares about America shutting off the money faucet and the allowance to continue conducting its ethnic cleansing campaign. H-Bomber Guy had a good tweet that I retweeted. If you're wondering why the TikTok generation sides so strongly with Palestine, it's because the IDF keep posting videos where they're destroying children's homes while screaming, "We are evil, yeehaw." Now, this is true, but that's simply a younger generation that has a very different media diet, developing a different understanding of Israel. This has no basis on Israel's policies at all. I don't think that Israel cares about that. Does that make sense? Like, I don't think Netanyahu cares about bad PR from the Western world. Yeah, they want to maintain a level of good relations with the Western world and the important demographics that go out and vote, but young people are not a part of that calculation at all. They already have mainstream media pretty much locked down as the American State Department is unconditionally offering support to Israel, and the Biden administration is offering unconditional support to Israel while simultaneously saying, oh yeah, dial it back a bit. Please be the more moral army that we know that you are. Come on, Jack. But I don't think Israel overall cares about this kind of stuff getting blasted. I mean, think about it this way. It's just like, did Ukraine care about having every single interviewed soldier have prominent totem cops displayed? No, they didn't give a shit because that didn't actually stop the money faucet. Because ultimately, Americans didn't give a shit. They didn't. They don't care. And I said this before, it's not like the entire fucking Ukrainian forces are comprised of Nazis. They're not. And yet, if you looked at mainstream media and the coverage, they somehow found the only guys that were wearing totem cops. Totem cof is a Nazi symbol. The skull, for those of you who don't know, or the black sun. I think that the maintenance and the PR that you have to do to the Western world is only as significant as how the mainstream media will cover it. The real problem would not stem from genuinely unpopular, genuinely like losing the popularity of the public in the Western world, but instead losing popularity in the circles that actually do care. Older voters, people who do go out and vote, people with wealthier people on average. But more importantly, if the State Department made an internal calculation where they recognize that this allegiance is becoming not great, the return on investment is now no longer worth it. That's why you look at Ukraine, for example, and you see what happens when America decides to no longer support Ukraine unconditionally. They are no longer sending in as many weapons. Then the media coverage changes dramatically. People start souring on the war. That is not because like the popularity went away. That's because the State Department interest changed. Part of the reason is because they look at Ukraine and they go, okay, they can't continue this. They just don't have enough manpower to continue this in the way that they have. That's how it works. So for Israel, this changes. The calculations change only if the State Department no longer considers it to be a valuable thing for Israel to continue the maintenance of its ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. Not it's Westerners got bored of Ukraine. Westerners get bored of wars all the time. We got bored of Afghanistan and Iraq, and we still continued it for another 10 years, right? Especially Afghanistan. That doesn't really mean much. It's more important for the economic calculations that you're doing.
So I think it's obvious. Obviously, in Lebanon, there are many Hezbollah targets, but whoever did this strike was very surgical and went for a Hamas target because Israel is at war. Whoever did this, has a gripe with Hamas.
Whoever did this was a very good attack. Whoever did it, I don't know, but it's a very good attack. I mean, I personally heard the guy who did this is super hot. That's what I heard. Not me. We're all looking for the guy who did this. We're all trying to find who did this, okay? I'm just as confused as you are. I did, however, hear that he's super sick. Like, he's super hot. His wife definitely loves having sex with him, is what I heard. It's odd. Some people tried to say the guy who did this probably has erectile dysfunction. I was like, no shot. Definitely not. Whoever's saying that is wrong. Now, I don't know who did it, but the guy who did it probably does not have erectile dysfunction. Please don't say that.
It's not an attack on the Hezbollah terrorist organization. Whoever did this, it's an attack on Hamas. That's very clear. Obviously, in Lebanon, there are many Hezbollah targets, but whoever did this strike was very surgical and went for a Hamas target because Israel is at war. Whoever did this.
Israel is at war. I mean, not Israel. Whoever did this is at war with Hamas. Not Israel. I promise. It's not Israel. Dog, don't say it's Israel. Please stop saying it's Israel. But if it was Israel, it's awesome.